Another important form of paragraph formatting is line spacing. With this document playpen, for example, I might press Ctrl A to select all. Line spacing in the paragraph group is controlled by this particular line and paragraph spacing button. At the moment the line spacing is 1, but I could change it to 1.5 line spacing, double line spacing, or even triple line spacing. I can even add spacing before paragraphs and after paragraphs, which creates big gaps between the paragraphs, almost saving me the need to press enter. If there's big gaps between your paragraphs, you may actually need to remove the line spacing either before or after. When you go into line spacing options, I believe that line spacing should before be 0, after be 0, and single spacing, and don't add a space between paragraphs of the same style. So to me, this should be the default spacing, 0, 0, single, and unticked. And I would set that as the default for all documents and OK. So if you've got a problem with your line spacing, take a moment to do that. Go OK, and that should resolve any excessive line spacing in your document. Having resolved any excessive before or after line spacing in all documents from now on, I may still then want to apply double line spacing. So Control A and then just use, say, the 2 for double line spacing. But it's important to know also that there are shortcut keys, and they are Control 1, Control 2, and Control 5. Don't use the number pad if you've got one out the right hand side of your keyboard. Use the numbers that go across the letters Q, W, E, R, T, Y. So Control 1 is single, Control 5 is 1.5, and Control 2 is double line spacing. So I'll put it back to single with Control 1. So line spacing can be achieved using shortcut keys, or can be achieved using the line spacing button in the paragraph group, but you can also go to the paragraph dialog box launcher, which also takes you into spacing and indenting as well. And cancel. Besides line spacing, we've also got, and paragraph spacing, we've also got borders and shading. Sometimes it's nice to really emphasize or zhuzh up a document using borders and shading. For example, I might like to put a border under decorating in 3 stages, so I click once to the left. Now I don't want to use underlining because underlining just underlines words. What I want to use is a line that goes from one margin to the other. So in the paragraph group, we want to use the borders button. If you hit the drop down on the borders button, you can choose the option bottom border, and now we have a snazzy bottom border going from the left margin to the right margin. If I want to put a border at the top and the bottom of the paragraph, maybe to emphasize it, I might double click and select this paragraph, and I'll put a bottom border and go back in and add a top border. So you can go back in and add additional borders. And so now this paragraph, if I click, has got a top and a bottom border. If I want to put a box around something, I'll double click a paragraph, maybe this one, go into the drop down and maybe choose an outside border. And so that actually applies a box to that border, to that paragraph. So you can have just a bottom and a top, or an entire box on all 4 sides. Now, in addition to borders, or exclusive of borders, you can actually add shading as well. So maybe I want to double click this paragraph, and I'll use the shading button here, and all I do is roll over the various colors to see what it's going to look like. So you just roll over and ultimately choose a color. And there it is there. So you don't have to combine borders and shading, they can be mutually exclusive. I could perhaps select this paragraph which doesn't have any borders and just apply some shading to it. And it just makes it stand out. Even if you've got a black and white printer, just adding a little bit of light grey shading can really emphasize a summarized or important point and make a document look good. There you go there. So borders and shading are really important as well. So in the paragraph group, we've covered all of these buttons. These bullets and numbers we're about to come up to. The only other button I might mention is this Show Hide button. When you click the Show Hide button, it shows hidden symbols. So when I click it, this may look familiar and you may have encountered this. What it's showing me is this backward looking P, which is actually technically a pilcrow, is telling me where enter's been pressed. So enter isn't pressed at the end of every line. It's pressed at the end of a paragraph. And that's why it knows when you double click that that's a paragraph, that's a paragraph, that's a paragraph, because of the pilcrow or the backward P at the end of the paragraph. You'll notice also little dots in between things. They are spaces. Wherever you've pressed space, you see dots. So if I was to click here and start pressing the space bar, spaces appear as dots. Enters appear as pilcrows. And if I was to press the tab key, that's how tabs appear. So just letting you know for your info. And I'll just click undo to get rid of that. And I'll just turn off my show hide or pilcrow because I don't want to see it. It's one of those buttons where people either love to have it on or they don't like having it on. I tend to turn it on when I want to see things and turn it off when I don't. So it's an on-off button. And if you see it, that's what's happened.